Previously.
Jump. Santoryu. Muton. Rengoku. Satori.
Oi, Queen. Yeah? That blackleg guy can use fire. Yup, he sure can. So? Do you remember how I always go back to my happy place whenever I have a day off? You mean the red line? Yeah, that. Yeah, what about it? Well, you see, remember that one time when Smoke Judge came up the red line too? And remember when I said I had an affair? Yup. Hang on a minute. You did not. Yup. No way. I did. His wife? His wife. King. I know. Damn. Wait. That means your black legs.
Sora told me she was on the pills, Ooh boy, One Piece has been extra spicy lately. Now before we go any further, I just want to say that I think this is one of the best chapters we've gotten throughout the entire course of this arc so far. And now yes, I know that if you've been following this channel for a while, or for the past couple of videos, which you should do by the way because it's free in case you didn't know, this fact might surprise you considering what happens at the very end. So without further ado, let's just hop right in. This chapter came featured with an amazing color spread of the top 50 global character poll that Oda said he would illustrate with some additional characters here and there, and lo and behold, here it is. Now there are actually 3 parts to this color spread, and what we're seeing is only the first part. They'll be revealed in succession to each other, so we'll be getting part 2 and part 3 next week and part 3 the week after that. So that means we won't be getting any breaks after chapter 1024. So for now, let's just take a second and admire the greatness that is Charlotte Katakuri because, yeah, I'm starving for that Katakuri content. On with the chapter. We start where we left off last chapter, and it seems Zoro and Sanji's attack did essentially 0 damage to King and Queen, or at the very least, it didn't even hurt them, well, according to Queen. So I expected, you know, that attack not to do much, but not that little, which was quite surprising. On a side note, this panel of King and Queen reminded me of Sanji and Zoro lying on the floor during one of the rounds of the Davy back fight when they fought against the Groggy monsters. Just thought it was an interesting parallel to bring up. So what happened this chapter seems to begin with kind of an independent 2v2 where the characters are doing their own thing while still looking out for each other's backs. Well, it was more just Sanji and Zoro. It doesn't seem like King or Queen really give a damn about each other. Or perhaps that's just a display of how much they trust each other to be fine, but I'm leaning more towards the former. But later on, the fight does break off into traditional 1v1s, but I was hoping we would get more of a team-up situation where Sanji and Zoro will be forced to work together, but even if we don't, that's not really a big deal. What I've been loving about these fights is the substance behind them rather than the actual battle itself. It's the reason why Frankie vs Sasaki, for example, is much more forgettable than Robin vs Black Maria or Jinbei vs Who's Who. And it's no different here, other than it being even better than before. So Marco bombshells us with yet another reveal that King's race used to reside on this place called God's Land, which just so happened to exist before the creation or the establishment of Mary Joa. Well, that kind of answers the question of why the Celestial Dragons took them out. Obviously they see themselves as gods, and I don't think they'll, think lightly of another race of beings having a hold of that title and not them. Though I do find it interesting that King's home turf is called God's Land and not something like the Land of Gods, because it now presupposes that there exists a character with the title of God, so perhaps instead of King's race, his entire race, being seen as gods, there would only be one entity with that title, perhaps their leader, much like Skypiea and how they have a kami or god as their leader, and the rest of them will be known as angels, which does actually fit them visually. I think all this information could have some sort of connection to the God Valley as well, but I don't think there's much evidence to go off of to build a solid connection other than the name God being present in both cases. Moving on from that, amidst of the battle, Sanji has a peculiar remark where he says that his body feels strange after using the raid suit for the second time. Now that explains why he was reluctant to wear it in the fight against the two calamities in the last chapter, but what could this mean exactly? As I see it, the suit is giving him an indirect boost to his Diable Jambe abilities. Now could this result in a new transformation? I'm not sure, but when he grabs hold of this feeling and he's able to muster it and use it at will, I believe he'll be able to control flames to a certain extent, and I'll explain why in another video I'm planning on making. I like how Queen also pointed out that Sanji in fact is not a normal human being. I've said this numerous times on my Twitter, but unfortunately it got suspended, and I've always held this belief that Sanji was never a normal human being, despite everything that happened. And I know, yes, I know Whole Cake Island, everything he went through, the themes of that, our large theme of that arc was that he was human, and that's exactly what makes him stronger than everybody else and separates him from his siblings. But Diable Jambe is living proof that Sanji is not normal, and I'll explain why. Firstly, I just want to say that just because Sanji is able to use abilities that other normal human beings can't, that doesn't take away anything from what happened to Sanji in Whole Cake Island or falsify any of the points he's made about him being human. A large part of Whole Cake Island was spent on the fact that Sanji is human, and that's based on his emotions rather than his abilities. So what differentiates Sanji from his brothers is the fact that he's a human being and he can feel human emotion while his brothers can't. So yes, by Judge's terms, Sanji was still in fact a failure, as he still had those human emotions that he wanted to get rid of so badly. But Sanji was still able to tap into the power of the lineage factor or bloodline element, like his brothers and sister. So his mom also failed in making him a completely normal human being. So essentially, he's a failure in both ways, failing to be a super soldier and failing to be completely human. But that's precisely the reason he's stronger than all of them. Really, Sanji got the best of both worlds. Now, I will admit that there is still the possibility of Sanji being able to ignite his legs just because he's really passionate. I wouldn't put it past Oda, because this is well within the logics of the One Piece world. You can literally regrow your tooth and heal the bones by drinking milk, and there's a walking skeleton that can talk, poop, and fart. The difference here is that those were mostly gag scenes and they were kind of just not serious and forgettable, but there's a point being made here about Sanji and how he's able to use these abilities. I don't see a reason for Oda to write it like this if he just wanted to name drop King's race, because he could have done that with that Marco flashback where Marco had the flashback with Whitebeard and how he was talking about the land of the gods, or sorry, God's land. He could have name dropped it just as easily there, but he didn't, and he did it later on and made a point to focus on Sanji, and he wouldn't do that for no reason, right? Speaking of which, we did get the name for King's race, which was a Lunarian. Now, obviously, I think it's pretty clear that a Lunarian has to do with the moon. Why it's literally in the name, Lune or Luna, which means moon, derived from languages of ancient Latin origins. So did King's race come from the moon? If so, for what reason did they come down to the earth? Or maybe his tribe worships the moon rather than being directly associated with it. I do find it interesting that the Lunarians are being associated with the moon rather than the sun, as they have the ability to control fire and conjure it, something that has no relation to the moon whatsoever. So we have kind of a yin and yang situation going on here, so I thought that's pretty interesting. How does this all relate to Sanji though? I'll go more in depth into it in the future, but for now I'll just say that Judge used the bloodline element of the Lunarians within Sanji, which explains Sanji's ability to utilize fire within his arsenal of abilities, mainly Diable Jambe. Sanji does an attack here, which I'm pretty surprised is not named. It kinda looks like a sideways party table kick course, except it's in the air, and it actually looks great visually. We also see Queen use Armin Haki for the first time, if I'm not mistaken. King also surprised me with his trick sword and the fact that he's not really a swordsman at all. I think that was a pretty unique decision Oda took on his part, and this brief fight with Zoro was really entertaining. Speaking of Zoro, we got not one, but two revelations about his past. Now, I don't think that the reveal was that surprising, as there were numerous hints laid about throughout the course of the series, but I love the way in which these reveals were shown and presented to us. And it's nice to finally get some closure, or at the very least, some concrete confirmation that Ushimaru is in fact Zoro's father, which makes Zoro a direct descendant of Ryuma, giving their whole encounter on Thriller Bark that much more weight. Like, seriously, go reread it and it'll hit different than it did the previous time. So correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to make sure I get the timelines right here. So 20 years ago, Orochi assumed the title of Shogun after executing Odin. He gave the remaining 4 daimyo the chance to submit to him, but they all refused and staged a rebellion. However, the rebellion was squashed by Kaido 2 years later, resulting in Ushimaru losing his life. Zoro at this time would have been 1 year old, but that wouldn't make sense if he was still in Wano. He's obviously not, he was on East Blue at this time. So perhaps before this battle, maybe a year before or even more, his father or mother devised a plan to evacuate some citizens out of the country because he started to see what Orochi was doing to it and suspected that something bad might happen. On that ship would be Zoro's mother, who would be pregnant with him during that time, and finally Zoro is born sometime later in the East Blue. What happened to his mother? I'm not sure. Maybe she died after the birth, just like Rouge. Or maybe she just went somewhere else to hide Zoro's lineage. I'm not sure about that, but that could be a possibility for what happened. But where was I? Oh yeah, right, Zoro. So later on, he'd be born in the East Blue, just as Oda had stated on numerous occasions. Most likely it'd be in Shimotsuki Village, which was founded by Kozaburo, who we know illegally departed from Wano some 50 years ago, and that village actually has direct ties to the Revolutionary Army. Now that's all I got for now. A flashback to tie everything would be sick, but I doubt that'll happen in the middle of this war, unless it's like super short. Oh, and Ryuma looks sick here. Next up we had Jack versus Inu. Not much to say here other than the dialogue was great. I really felt the emotion and tension in this one. We also got to see Jack's hybrid form, which is alright, I guess. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even realize it was his hybrid form until I reread the chapter. It just looks a bit too similar to his full Zoan form, if I'm being honest, but I'll need a better look to be sure. Inu goes Sulong again, which will definitely have a big toll on his body. We saw how fatigued Carrot was just after one transformation, so Inu is a beast for using it again after such a short time has passed between this and the first transformation he had. But obviously they're all willing to die, so I'm not that surprised. Neko does it too. However, in his case, I think it's a bit unnecessary. I don't think you even needed to go with Sulong to beat up Perospero. I think that's kind of overkill. Like, what's Peros even supposed to do besides becoming a ragdoll in this situation? Maybe Neko intends to wrap it up quickly and help Inu, perhaps with Jack, but still kind of overkill. After that, we have Raizo versus Fukurokuju once again. Yes, this is definitely the content I needed. This is what I want to see more than anything out of the whole entire arc. But definitely, I'll say it's not as good as the last chapter. But on the contrary, or ironically, I kind of agree with Fukurokuju's statement this time when I didn't last chapter. Just because Momo has now become an adult, it doesn't mean he's ready to be a leader yet. In Fukurokuju's own words, everyone needs time to mature, and Oda brought up the point of bringing that up. Something that Momo was progressively doing was maturing, but that was cut short. Which brings us to the end of the chapter. Momo has become an adult.
Well, thief, I smell you. I hear your breath. I feel your air. Where are you?
Now, I'll say right now, right away, I don't like Momo turning to an adult, and I never will. However, come on bro, this panel was just so raw and goosebump inducing that I just completely forgot about all of that shit. But yeah, at the end of the day, I still think this was a bad decision for the story, no matter how cool it does look. As long as Momo's role is delegated to flying Luffy up and perhaps lifting the island and struggling to use his abilities along the way, then I'm fine with it for the most part. However, If Momo is able to fight Kaido and have a significant role in beating him, I will. I kid you not. You can write this down. I will drop the series. You will not see any more One Piece content on this channel because that will be beyond horrendous. I cannot stand that if that happens. The main antagonist of this arc, beaten by a kid, or a kid having a big part to play in beating him. So let's hope that day doesn't come. And don't give me the, oh, he's older now, he's so much more mature. No, that's not how it works. Oda already made deliberate points in saying that just because something ages up doesn't mean that it'll be more mature. That's not how the body works. Yes, his brain developed, but you develop your brain throughout your childhood with the experiences and everything you have. We just stripped all that away from Momo. He sacrificed all that, especially shower times and nap times with Robin and Nami. But aside from that, he wasn't able to have a normal childhood and develop these skills that he needed to fully mature and become the adult that he will become. For now, he's just a child in a man's body, essentially a man baby. So we'll see how that plays out, I guess, but don't say that he's more mature just because he's older, because no, he's not. Based on his dialogue, however, and just the way he's presenting himself, he does seem a lot more confident and willing. Before, he was kind of like really scared and stuff, but now he has the strength to make a difference, and he's kind of pushing that forward and stepping up because he knows that if I don't do it now, then I'm never going to do it, right? So I think he conquered his fear, or is suppressing it to a certain extent. Momo also seems to be a lot smaller than Kaido, so hopefully that's enough of an indication that he can't tango with the Big King himself. With this decision to age Momo up, it seems like joining the crew for him now is far less likely. I just can't see a giant-ass dragon, essentially a mini Kaido, following them around 90% of the time. I don't see any of the enemies being able to do anything unless they're top tier. He'll just be far too overpowered in my eyes. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what he could do first, but having a giant dragon as a protector of Wano seems like the more suitable role for Momo to take at this present moment. Finally, Shinobu gives a remark of Momo's appearance, and I am not surprised in the slightest that we aren't seeing his human form. I kind of expected it at the very least, because Oda is a dick and a troll, and he likes doing this shit. Obviously, now Shinobu is insinuating that Momo looks like Odin, and I'll be praying every night that he does not look like this. Alright, that's pretty much it for the chapter. It nearly reached legendary status for me. So many great reveals, even more questions. Wouldn't be One Piece without it, right? Great fights, and a cliffhanger that was just, it left me speechless, like right now. I don't know what to say. It was so beautiful, especially that coloring. I'll put the artist's or Twitter account in the description below, but he did such a great job with this coloring, and shout outs to him. So with all that being said, I'm giving this chapter a 9.5 out of 10. I'm really looking forward to what's in store for us next week because once again, no break. But until then, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel for more future content like this, and I will see you guys very, very soon. This is Soul, signing out.